In today's episode of our Road to Unicum, I review the LHMTV. This is the new Tier 8 British light tank in World of Tanks, and we're going to take a look at this in 3 different battles. First up is a Fjords Tier 9 battle, and then we're going to look at a Tier 10 Minsk battle, which goes very badly, as well as an all Tier 8 Airfield battle, in which I've really got to struggle to prevent the loss. And those latter 2 battles, I'm going to try something a little different than usual. I'm going to ask you guys what you would do in certain situations and then contrast that with how I handle the situation. So the LHM TV, like all the British lights, has extremely low damage per minute. This is true of the 7, 8, 9, and 10. The Tier 8, in my opinion, might be the best of those 4 new light tanks on paper, primarily because the gun performance in terms of the alpha and penetration is unusually good. Now, it still suffers from low damage per minute, only around 1400 relative to the other single shot Tier 8 light tanks on the tech tree, which have 4 of them have 1900 to 2100 damage per minute, and then one of them, the Lynx, has 1749 damage per minute, but that tank also has access to an awesome high explosive round. So I think to make this tank more balanced for the masses, what would be appropriate would be to boost its damage per minute by, say, 20%, so we bring it up to about 1700. So it would still be lower damage per minute than the other tanks, but it would be enough that it would be competitive for most players. Now, one thing you can see there, when I'm trying to aim over the side of my tank at this T20, the T25 pilot, I was having trouble raising the gun. So this tank has superb max gun depression of minus 10 degrees. However, the elevation off the sides and back of the tank is really bad. And if you've played the French autoloader lights, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The elevation over the front of the tank is really good. And so, if you're having trouble getting your gun up, what you can simply do is turn and face your hull towards your opponent. Now, I don't necessarily recommend coming to the 7 lane. It's a very high finesse position. I wanted to try it out just to see how it would work, and in this case I'm totally able to work over this medium tank by playing the vision game. Notice I wait until he crosses that gap, until those pine trees that are standing upwards are between us, and I've just farmed him for 1200 damage. And in my opinion, that little area that he went to on the northeast side of the hill is definitely a no to go from either spawn, right? Because if you get to that, you can see in that northeast hill there's a little section, it's almost like a little finger that points to the northeast. There's no soft cover around those, so anytime you peek around the corner, you're going to be fully visible. And so that doesn't really work well this early, especially if an opposing tank goes along the 7 lane and can spot you. Okay, right here I'm going to make a really subtle mistake. So I'm going to take a shot in the Meal 2, which is good. That's a hard target, and he's top tier. What looks like happened is I got spotted by that Artie. Now, I believe the reason why I got spotted was because while my turret showed, when I did a cover check, that my turret was behind a bush so that the Meal 2 wouldn't be able to spot me, the front of my tank was probably not covered by that bush, so when I fired, that's why I was lit. And I got to be careful. Obviously, the M12 knows that I'm here because I was spotted, and if he was paying attention, he would have realized the T25 pilot was getting picked apart, which means that there's a light tank along the 7 line. The great thing about being able to hang out along here, there is an abundance of soft cover, and there's this rock. So what I can do, wait long enough, and in this case I didn't wait long enough, but wait the 10 seconds until I'm no longer lit, and then what I can do is play vision games with these guys and just totally mess with them. Now, this position can get broken by 2 things. One, if they have a tank push up this road to counter spot me, which they never did, and certainly it can get broken if the tanks win the northeast corner. You've got to be careful in case they come up behind you. And like looking at the map, the main problem we've got as far as our defense, if you look at it, is we don't have any tanks that are shielding our arties, right? Okay, so I wanted to back off that T25-2 from the hill, so I managed to spot him and push him off. Their AMX is like belatedly rushing up here, and I think this is largely a panic move, right? Now, there's often something that players do. They're so tentative that they'll sit back, they'll do so too long and not contribute any meaningful damage, and then they'll choose to push up later into bad situations like that AMX did when it doesn't make sense. Now, originally I was going to go spot the T25-2 in their arties, but you know what? Totally not needed. That's not where we might lose this battle, right? If you take a few seconds and you look at the map, where are we vulnerable, right? The 257 is close enough that he's going to spot their Artie. Artie's now dead, and he can go bully that T25-2 who is 2 tiers below him. But there is still the possibility that we could lose here if their mediums and their T95, like really to defend, all they need is for their T95 to go back. Because if the heavies want to get to him, they have to climb up a hill to get at him, and he's got a superb armor profile. Now, I was lit even before I fired that shot on the Indian Panzer, and what's not clear is it because the Indian Panzer spotted me, or is the standard B in a position where it could spot me? And I have to be careful too, because I have to assume until I can see otherwise that the T95 is here and I can be one shot. Okay, thankfully our Progetto has flexed around and is now heading toward the Indian Panzer, and I want to try to find a way to spot and keep my gun active, but I've got to be super careful. Okay, so now I know for sure the Indian Panzer can't spot me where he is, so I'm guessing that he was most likely the one to spot me. And our guys are about to close out the cap. I mean, the good thing about cap pressure is it draws enemies back unless they just want to lose, right? So you can see their standard B had gone back to help fight in their base, and the cap just got reset. Now, if I were our heavies, I wouldn't actually be trying to cap. I would maybe go to cap pressure into the cap to apply pressure, and then I would come out. And then I find their heavy totally unexpectedly here, and you're going to watch him. I'm just going to turn on auto aim, and I'm literally going to drive circles around him, and he's doing the exact wrong thing. If you're a heavy being circled by a smaller, faster tank, the thing that you want to do is find a rock or building or even a dead tank to put your butt up against so that you can't get circled. Ideally, it's a wall or a building where they can't get around behind you, right? And granted, you know, this tank, I don't know if it's the terrain resistances, its circling is a little bit on the wider side, but with that speed I'm carrying, I'm forcing that heavy tank, the KV-122, to consistently turn his turret as he's trying to shoot me, and that's going to cause his aiming reticle to bloom. You know, it's called reticle bloom for a reason, just like a flower blooming, and it's unlikely he's going to hit me, whereas I've got a really good accurate gun. He's slower. And this is the thing about the gun. The wonderful thing about it is that the silver AP penetration is 226. I mean, that's as good or better than a lot of tier 8 medium tanks, and that's something that I super value in a tank, because high penetration means high likelihood, as long as the shot goes where you want, where it's going to penetrate. And then the alpha for this gun is also pretty good at 230 damage per shot. So the gun, when you fire it, has good performance. The main limitation is simply, you know, this horror bad damage per minute. What I found fascinating, I'll show you guys this at the end of the video after we go through the third battle, are the stats that I was able to put up playing this tank on 100% solo and using, you know, as normal for me, only silver ammo and no mods. And the statistics I was able to put up, I actually averaged a 69% win rate and over 2,500 damage contributed per game. So that's a combination of damage and assisted. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, Minsk is a map where a lot of light tank drivers often struggle, and typically what I try to do is go to that east-west ridge over by E and F and get early spots on their tanks, especially when we have 1 to 3 arties, because it's good to get their guns activated, and I want to be there to counter spot their tanks that hit the ridge. Now, the really bad thing that our M41 did is he ran into me and probably delayed me by about 10 seconds. See their LHMTV, so he's my mirror tank, he already reached the middle ridge. And what's really kind of annoying is our M41D plowed me out of the way and then is now camping. So he rushed to get to a position where he's doing nothing meaningful, and in the process of preventing me from getting here from early spots. Like ideally you can see where their 50 TP is, right? He's in the open, he's totally artiable by our FV3805. What I want to try to do is get up on this ridge early so I can spot as many tanks as I can in the open, either tanks that are pushing up along the 7 lane, because a lot of heavies will do this, or tanks that are in the field that our arties can dump on. And the other thing to keep in mind is you want to get a sense of the enemy deployment as early as you can. Okay, so if you do manage to get to this middle ridge early, or even if you get here later, one trick that I try to do in terms of gardening is to face directly north-south and knock over some of these trees directly in front of me, because then later if you manage to brush their light tanks off of this road, you can pull up into the knockdown tree, what's effectively now a bush, and then use that to spot. Now, I can't do this safely yet because of the EBR-75, right? I have to choose when I do it. I have to do it at a time when he's backing off of the ridge. Like, I wouldn't want to do it right now because he'd spot me. But what I could do now is just aim north and south, push up, and knock that tree over, right? Or at least I could do it if the other light tank on our team had any awareness at all and was watching where he was driving. The bad thing is he didn't just block me. He pushed me further up and onto the road. So you can tell I'm pretty salty in chat. Like, our light tanks are not really doing much of value. Our EBR-75 did manage to shoot one of their tanks, but part of the problem is we've lost map control, right? They've already crossed the EF lane, and they're doing it with enough numbers now where I can't stand there and safely fire at them. So one of the things I wanted to do in this battle and the next one is ask you, given the game flow and the map situation, think about where you would go and why, right? And so what I'm going to do here is try to see if I can get some more open shots on the sides of tanks as they cross the gap from the F1 to E1, right? And if I don't see anything, I don't really want to stay here. Like, what our M41D is doing is sitting there trading shots with an EBR-75, so he manages to kill him, but where he is not really important for the battle right now. The main battle is happening on the west side of the map, so the correct play in this situation is figure out a way to blunt their advance on the 1-2 lanes. Right now it looks like 8, 9, and 0. It's a stalemate. Got multiple heavies on both sides, and we've got our JPE 100, which is a pretty beefy tank, with the exception of its lower plate. And so because they have won the 1-2 lanes so big, I need to spot their tanks as they're trying to exit the 1-2 lanes and cut east, and enable our tanks behind me to get as many shots in as possible and safely, right? And so a lot of times what will happen with light tank drivers is they'll over retreat. They'll cross the river in this case, they'll move back to where the Batchat or the Udet is, and if you do that, if you're at the same depth as your other friendly players, when they fire on the things that you shoot, there's a chance that they're going to get spotted. But because I'm ahead of our Udez, our Batchat, and our SU-101, if I light tanks like their M4A1, Revolver, or the T10, our guys are going to be able to fire on them safely and not get lit. And that's really one of the keys about light tank play. You want to be, you can see I'm out diagonally to the south or southwest of our other tanks, and this is really important. I'm also periodically doing some cover checks to see if I can help out our VK and our JPE on the eastern side of the map with some flanking fire and just whittle down those heavy tanks. And some of it's a psychological thing. You know, once players start to lose hit points, especially in heavies, they tend to get a little bit more conservative. Now I'm going to back up here. Oh, notice, by the way, that I knocked down 2 of these trees that are in front of me to the west, right? And the reason why I did that is I gardened intentionally to create a wider north-south amount of trees. There's about 25-30 meters worth of trees because I knocked those 2 down to make a contiguous line, right? And so now I have a wide line. Even if they blind fire, they're going to have to make a really good guess at where I am to shoot me. And notice I backed up until that tank, the bushes in between us, got solid, and now that he's just dropped, I move temporarily just to bring him back in my vision. And in this case, I just go ahead and fire on him because he can't spot me given that his crew is stunned. Now it is possible that if there were another tank where he was and I fired and they weren't stunned, that they could see me. That's a bummer, by the way. I thought I might have had a kill shot on that 277. You got to be careful. But notice, like, the M4A1 is making a huge mistake. He was doing this earlier. If you're trying to approach enemies, you can't do it on the inside of hard cover if there's no protection for you. You know, and especially in a tank like the M4A1, which is both tall and somewhat slow, he's just losing enormous chunks of his hit points, right? And their Batchat made the same mistake earlier. He tried to exit down the 2 lane on the east side of the building, and so that allows to put some shots into him, and that's going to factor in really importantly here. Now, he and I spotted each other. It's going to take him 3 shots to kill me, whereas I just need 1. All right, so he's going to do something smart here. He's going to go ahead and get the first shot advantage because he had stopped. Notice I don't snapshot that low percentage shot. I just say, just come on, if you want to kill me, stick your neck out again, because I can take the hit, he can't, and I can finish him off. But, you know, it's really important. Make sure you have the right depth in a light tank. Early on in games, you want to be reasonably far forward, but not so far forward that you don't have an exit lane. Someone was asking me a question the other day about, hey, when you drive into bushes, how important is it to turn around and so that you can do a quick getaway, right? And like Quickie Baby has shown this, like on the middle road in Lakeville, he'll go up to one of those advanced bushes, do that nifty handbrake, so he spins around 180s, he's facing south. So you can do that. Like, I don't trust my hand-eye coordination driving to do that consistently, and I would also, my main thing is I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm relying on my driving in open ground and people's bad aim to assume that they're going to miss me. What I would much rather do, and this is a far more repeatable method for the majority of players who can't do Quickie Baby slick handbrake 180 turn, is to go to positions where there's this magical trifecta I always talk about. A good field of fire with hard cover with adjacent bushes. In this case, this rock in front of me is great because there are bushes on both sides of it. And so it's really powerful to be able to play positions like this. The main thing is, and I've had this problem in multiple games where heavies come up here, and because they have no camo, when they stick their neck out in front of a bush, anything that could possibly spot them will spot them, and then I get shot. So you just kind of got to be wary. It's just like in the prior game, I pretty much learned that the two light tanks that were on my team were complete morons in terms of their awareness and their driving skills, right? And so you kind of have to take data and think about what is it that other people are doing, and if they've either shown a propensity to kind of block you or to drive in front of your shot or other stuff, like, you have to adjust. It's unfortunate, right? And by heavies coming to these bushes and potentially causing me to have to get away from the bushes, that's really problematic, because then I can't do my job as effectively. If I can't spot, it provides fewer targets for our other tanks, and especially our arty to fire on. This particular battle I wanted to show, just like in Minsk, we're going to build a pretty big deficit because our team just doesn't play an area of the map well. In this case, it's the sprawling area in the middle. Now, I do have to be careful. Obviously, when I take that shot in that Super Pershing, the T-2064, I can get shot by their snipers that are back by their base. So a lot of times there'll be a sniper all the way back, for example, over by, let's say, over by H, or sorry, J8, J9, etc. So you can get shot at by snipers in the far back. The reason why I am brawling with these guys, one, I can get the first shot advantage because there's this bush right in front of me, right? But the other thing too is I'm getting the sense that our heavies are in terrible positions and we're gonna lose this fight, and so I need to work my gun in as much as possible, deal the damage that I can to give us a chance of winning. See, like that VK just got hemmed in and got his butt kicked. Now their VK 100.01p has to turn to face me, and so he's actually opening up a better shot on his lower plate, right? But in this situation, I don't really want to be brawling with heavies. Like, I don't have armor compared to them. They hit harder than me. They're super scary. But again, sometimes in service of the win, you need to think about what is it that I can do that's going to create a problem. And so think about what you would do, and how would you play this situation here. So the main thing that a lot of people do is they would get off the shelf and run away, right? And part of the problem is you can only run for so long, right? And if you just run to the same depth as everyone else, if they have superior numbers, they're going to reach you. Their backline snipers will be able to shoot your team. You're not going to be able to do anything about it, and you're just going to get hemmed in and beat up, right? So now we've managed to pull the lead back. I mean, our heavies have really just got mauled on the North Hill area. Gosh, our Meals have managed to keep all of his hit points. But what we've done now, because we've stayed on the shelf, what we've done is create a situation where they have to clear this shelf in order to get rid of us. If they don't get rid of us, we can shoot down on them as they try to cross the 5 and 4 lanes, right? I did get shot earlier by the new VK 75.01 Premium. Part of it, that was my fault. If I had waited 3 or 4 seconds before I pulled out to take a shot on one of their heavies, I would have dropped from being lit, and I could have fired safely, because their VK 75.01 was already pre-aiming in my direction. That was a mistake that I made, and I lost almost 500 hit points because of it. I can't do anything about where he is now. He's in that little hook, which basically, unless someone drives around the corner to fight him, they're not going to be able to get there. And obviously I can't do that because their HWK 12 is over on the B lane, and so anyone who goes after their VK is going to be vulnerable to flanking fire from that HWK, as well as any other TDs that they may have. Often a TD will be sitting on the hill over by D9 or over in the corner by B9, B0. Okay, and this lead is a little bit deceptive. We we were up 7-6. The issue is some of our tanks that had pushed all the way down along the J line have kind of stalled out, and so now this again becomes an issue of contesting the middle. And part of the problem too is, if you push too far on an extreme side of the map, like the south side of the map is, you're not going to get meaningful help from other friendly players, right? And so you're isolated. You're either going to win it or you're going to lose it, but for the most part, the only other tank that's going to be able to meaningfully help you is Artie, right? And Artie's got a very long reload, so that the damage per minute is not going to be there. Now it is where our UDES 14.5 is. He's in a good position on hill, so when their tanks are spotted, he can help. This is now super scary. All of our heavies have died. Their Wizzy knows that I'm up here, and the main thing that I need to do is just delay him. If he gets too close to me, I can get around him and flank him. And the thing is, his position, I know, is vulnerable. He just rushed that shot. You should always watch for muzzle flashes or when tanks fire. It gives me some time to come up and hit him again. And, that's not a guaranteed pan. That was showing as like yellow on the indicator. It's a shot you got to take, right? And the problem for the Wizzy is he's stuck. And as a matter of fact, he should not be backing up as much as he is, because he's putting himself in the line of fire of our AT-15 who takes him out, right? So I've stayed on this hill not because it's fun to be this close to enemy players, but because this is the way. By staying here and being a pain in their butt, I can make it possible for our tanks to snipe them as they're trying to advance across the map. All right, so think for a moment what you would do given this map situation. Okay, I see two viable options here. One would be to try to push around all the way to the south where the charioteer and R, is that a T9? Yeah, T92R. Now, I'm not going to do it because one, that would take too long to do it. And then two, it's important to clear the tank that's furthest up. So our AT-15 has obviously been spotted due to proximity next to the VK. I most certainly am not going to go anywhere near where the HWK-12 is, nor the Progetto. Progetto can kill me in 3 shots. The HWK can out DPM me, and I believe, like a lot of German tanks, he's got one of those really good HE rounds. Even if he doesn't, he can still kill me in a couple shots, which would be bad news. So the most important thing, let's clear the VK first, and you can see that the other VK is down by their base. So this VK is isolated. You want to clear an edge or corner of the map, especially if the tank there is isolated. And the other thing too to pay attention is not all their tanks are going to be lit. So we know where one of their tanks is. We don't know where the other 3. It's been a while since we've seen them. You can use Sixth Sense to make very good guesses as far as where they're deployed. And I should not be driving in a straight line like this. That's a little bit too sloppy or lazy on my part. Just a little bit of wiggle is probably be better. And then here I've been shot at by their UDES. So their UDES has done something which is a good thing. He pushed up. Now, I wouldn't have necessarily recommended going to that exact location. Where we're going to spot him, he's going to be by a rock. Where he really should be is, not that rock, but further to the east. There's a rock with some bushes. But as it is, our UDES 14.5 is able to spot their UDES TD when he's away from the rock. And then that's an easy kill shot for him, because that tank, while it has phenomenal camo and an amazing gun, does not have any armor to speak of. Okay, now the Progetto, the last time he was spotted, remember this is an option you can turn on the game client to see where he last was. So I need to check this shelf first, but if he's not here, this shelf is a phenomenal spotting location, especially for advancing, because I can, again, this magical trifecta, phenomenal field of view in multiple directions, abundant hard cover, abundant soft cover. So this is great. And then we know where their Progetto is because the Lanson may have spotted him, or I may have spotted him when he crossed the gap. Actually, it's probably me who spotted him, but actually, I take that. I'm not sure. The Progetto knew he was spotted, but the thing is, I get the first shot advantage because I can see him. He hasn't seen me yet. Now, you could certainly argue I should have backed up 5 meters first before firing just to be extra safe. But at any rate, a lot of times, if you are aiming, see this VK, he has a pretty solid idea about where I am, but he doesn't have a precise knowledge of where I am. And with a small tank like this, I can sit there and work him. All I need to do is avoid getting artied and stay here long enough for that, approximately 10-11 seconds where I'm going to drop from being lit. And, with a gun that has you can look at your gun reload. Like in this case, it's 8.4 seconds. So all I need to do is after I've reloaded my shell is wait about another 2 seconds and I'm good. And again, you can see here with this Progetto, he's aiming in my general direction, but he doesn't know precisely where I am. The main thing you need to be careful of in that situation is not taking too long to fire, because if a tank knows that their sixth sense indicator pops up, he'll know that I'm in the bush. Now, he may not know exactly where I am in the bush, but you want to get that, especially if they happen to be looking exactly where you are, you got to take the shot and then back up immediately. And a shot like that, by the way, is very low risk for me because he's not going to spot me. The bush is solid. He doesn't have vision. So even though it's a low percentage shot because it's very little of his lower plate, that's okay. So to summarize some of the issues with this tank, horrifically low DPM. It really should get buffed. And also very, very low ammo count. Now, in the 90-something battles I played in this tank, I've never run out of ammo. But, part of the reason why is I don't take as many blind shots as I do toward bushes, my probing shots, which only have like a 10 or 25% chance of landing. And by the way, think about where you would go right now. Okay, so obviously we know the VK's in the south. I'm going to check the northeast corner because our tanks had pushed pretty far in the southwest and didn't spot there already. So my assumption is maybe he's up here. He hasn't fired on me for the most part because I haven't put myself in a position where I could get artied. That's super important. So I just want to clear this corner. So now we know, okay, those guys are in the southeast corner of the map. Notice as I'm advancing, I'm driving intentionally in a vector that places me behind the bush and then peel off to the side and then head over to the hardcover. But this is the way you want to kind of advance from rock to rock through bush to bush and minimize the time you're going to be out in the open. So here I'm spotted. That's okay. He's not going to have the time to aim on me, and that tank has really crappy gun depression anyway. I just don't want to get splashed by their arty, right? Okay, so tragically low DPM, low ammo count. The tank only weighs like 5 metric tons, so it will be squished by anything and everything, so you got to be careful. But on the plus side, superb max gun depression. Oh, another downside is the fact that the gun has just horrific elevation off the sides and the back, but you can manage that if you're aiming over the front of your tank or if you're on flat land. On the positive side, phenomenal camo values. I think approaching or in excess of 39 in my case with Brothers in Arms, Camo, and vents. And in this case, I have to use vents with this particular crew to get over the 445 meters of view range because I don't also have recon. In order to have recon mostly completed as a skill, I'd need close to 5 skill crew. Right, and so I don't necessarily want to be running vents, but it does enable me to run fire extinguisher, which I want because a tank like this can get set on fire, and then vents does help a little bit with a horrific DPM. So, like I was saying before, over 2,500 combined damage contribution in terms of damage caused and assisted damage. That is better than any other tier 8 tank that I played, with the exception of the overpowered LT432 Premium and the overpowered EBR 75. So. And I think part of the reason my stats in this tank may be as good as they are is I was super dialed in and concentrating because I knew that I was bringing a knife to a gunfight. But it does have phenomenal camo and it's small, so you can play very clever vision games. This is not to say the tank is balanced. It is not. It's underpowered. But if you're careful, like I've been, you can make it work.